Well, let's discuss some of those issues a little bit more with UKIP MP Douglas Carswell, who joins me now. On this question of whether the deal that Mr Cameron has got is legally watertight or not, isn't the truth that the European Court of Justice wouldn't weigh in and go against a decision that's been signed off by 28 political leaders?
I'm afraid that's not so. If you actually read the text of the agreement, it makes very clear, I think in the second or maybe third paragraph, that the agreement conforms with the European treaties. It then goes on to explain how the European Court will, of course, adjudicate in any dispute. So, in effect, we've got a piece of paper that says, yes, Mr Cameron's got this new deal, but the European institutions are in charge, and, guess which way they tend to rule.
Michael Gove also talked today about immigration. He was making the broad point about sovereignty, about being in control of your country's own destiny, really. He said he doesn't have a problem with the numbers of people coming to this country. It's about the type of people who are coming, the skills that we need.
Look, no one that I know wants to close the borders, but we want to control our borders. I know people in my constituency who've lived in this country for 30, 40 years. They came over from India in the 60s and the 70s, and they deeply resent the fact that they can't bring granny over for a wedding. And yet at the same time, we get people who are allowed into this country from Eastern Europe who've got no connection with this country. If we were to leave the European Union and take back control, we could have an Australian points-based system that would be fair to everyone.
But there would be an issue with numbers. You would presumably reduce the numbers coming to this country from the EU.
I think that would happen, but look, I tend to be pretty liberal about these things. I tend to recognise that actually a great city like London is great because it brings the brightest and the best from around the planet. But we need a system of control that makes sure that the people who come here are the brightest and the best, not just coming here because they happen to have an EU passport.
If I could just ask you briefly about something a bit closer to home in your party. The deputy chairwoman, Suzanne Evans, seems to have been sacked from her job. What do you make of that? I'm a
little disappointed to learn that she's no longer deputy chairman, but look, I work very closely with Suzanne. The great news is she's got a key role here, head of communications for UKIP's parliamentary team. We're going to be hearing and seeing a lot more of her. She's got a great contribution to make, not just to UKIP, but in the referendum. We've got 120 days left. We need all the voices we can get, and hers is a key one.
Douglas Carswell, thank you very much indeed. So that intervention today from Michael Gove, pretty significant. Of course, someone who is a close friend of the Prime Minister's, but of course who has chosen to be on the opposing side in this argument.